On September 6, 2014, firefighters were called to a blazing house fire near Marion, Illinois. Once the fire had been extinguished, investigators found the badly burned body of 53-year-old Lisa Uzzle. Upon further investigation, authorities discovered that Lisa had actually been shot several times prior to her body being set on fire inside of her home. It's now been 6 years since Lisa's murder, and authorities are no closer to solving this case. So let's talk about it. Today's case takes place in Marion, Illinois, which is the southernmost part of the state. Marion has a population of around 17,000, and it's a very pretty area. It's got a lot of wooded area, a lot of rolling hills, even some wineries. Marion is also located very close to Carbondale, Illinois, which is home to Southern Illinois University. And Marion is where Lisa Uzzle had spent most of her adult life. Lisa had been a postal worker for 25 years for the United States Postal Office in Marion. She also served as our union steward, and she was known as a bit of a prankster to her colleagues. So she was always pulling practical jokes, trying to get everybody to laugh and really keep the mood light. So 5 years prior to Lisa's death, she had actually gotten separated and divorced from her husband. And at that time, Lisa decided it was the perfect opportunity for her to build what she thought was going to be her dream home. Lisa's father had left her about 50 acres of land prior to his death, so Lisa decided that she was going to build a very modest one-story ranch on this property. Lisa and her husband had 2 children together, Stephanie, who was 27 at the time of Lisa's death, and her younger brother, Matthew. Now, Matthew had a severe form of cerebral palsy, so Lisa and her ex-husband did share in the caretaking duties for Matthew. Unfortunately, Matthew's cerebral palsy left him bound to a wheelchair and nonverbal. So even after their divorce, Lisa and her ex did share in his caretaking duties. Stephanie lived out of state, but Lisa and Stephanie were very close. They talked on the phone almost daily. So they maintained a very, very close connection. And Lisa's death has definitely left a void in Stephanie's life, and she is bound and determined to figure out who killed her mother. So Lisa starts building her dream home, and it did take a little bit longer than she had hoped. Lisa still has a Facebook page up, and it is public, and I actually found a status that she had posted at the end of April 2014, so a few months before her death in September, in which she stated that her home was finally going to be done. It was 2 years past the estimated completion of the project, and she even said in there, if I'd known how long this was going to take, I might have actually just bought a home instead. But she was excited to be moving into the home that she thought was really going to be her sanctuary, and instead it turned out to be her hell. So let's fast forward to September, and September 5th, which was a Friday, was the very last time that Stephanie would speak to her mother. As I stated earlier, they talked nearly every single day. So on Friday, September 5th, Stephanie had talked to her mother on the phone. She said it was a normal conversation. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary. So on Saturday, September 6th, which would ultimately be Lisa's date of her death, earlier that day, she was spotted in Marion getting her nails done, doing some clothes shopping in the morning, which Stephanie wonders, since she was getting her nails done and going clothes shopping, was she perhaps going out that night? Was she meeting up with anybody? But nobody has ever come forward to say that they had plans with Lisa. Now, between the morning, when people had saw her getting her nails done and shopping in Marion, and then 11 o'clock that night, which is when firefighters were called to her home, there's not a timeline there. So I don't know if police privately know what she was doing during that time, but there's no public information to fill in those gaps. So the next thing we know is at 11 p.m. on Saturday, September 6th, Lake of Egypt firefighters were called to a house fire. Now, Lisa had built her dream home on this property her father had left her, and it was in a rural part of Williamson County. So it was actually in South Williamson County, and it was on South McGeesville Road. So because it is more of a rural wooded area, it's not a neighborhood. She didn't have immediate neighbors. I'm imagining that somebody probably saw the blaze from afar and called it into the firefighters, but I have never seen confirmation of who actually called in this fire. So firefighters, come upon the scene, they get the fire extinguished. When all is said and done, there's nothing standing of this house. I'll put up a picture of what it looked like afterwards. It's literally just rubble. There's one kind of half wall that's still standing, but that's about it. And as they're combing through the debris, they find a very badly burned body. In fact, Lisa's body was so badly charred, it was not identifiable. So they had to wait actually a few weeks to do DNA testing to definitively prove that it was Lisa's body. Now, of course, Stephanie, like I said, was living out of state. So the next day, on Sunday, September 7th, she receives a phone call in which, she's told, your mother's house burned down. They found a body. Stephanie knew right away, of course, this is going to be my mother. And Stephanie did find that odd because Lisa was apparently a light sleeper. And Stephanie said, you know what? Even a leaky faucet would wake my mom up in the middle of the night. So she did find it odd that Lisa would have slept through a blaze. But of course, these things could happen. And it was just a one-story home. So it's not like there was multiple levels. So at this time, everybody is just thinking, gosh, this is a tragedy. But nobody thought it was a homicide at this point. They just thought it was an unfortunate house fire and that Lisa had perished in this house fire. So fast forward 1 month later, and State's Attorney Brandon Zanotti held a news conference. And this is what he announced at the news conference. So number one, investigators found the fire and Lisa's death to be suspicious because of evidence they found while sorting through the debris. They have never publicly stated what exactly the evidence was that they found that made them feel that this was a suspicious death in the first place. I'm imagining that maybe they found cans of accelerant that wouldn't have, burned up in the fire. But again, they've never publicly stated what exactly they found that tipped them off in the first place, that this was probably a fire that was set on purpose. Number two, as they were, doing DNA testing on Lisa, a forensic pathologist actually discovered that Lisa did not die in the fire, but she died as a result of several gunshot wounds, including a fatal gunshot wound to her head. Then her body was set on fire in her home. So now this has gone from, oh, it's a tragic accident, to this is definitely a homicide. Authorities also stated that they believe that the killing was premeditated and not random. So now, obviously, with Marion being a smaller town and Lisa having lived and worked in that community for years, nobody knows what exactly happened or who would have wanted to hurt Lisa. And that's really where kind of everything stops. Like I said, 6 years later, there's been nobody arrested for this crime. There's never been a person of interest publicly announced to the media. And I did find a really good article, which I will link below, from the Southern Illinois newspaper. So it is an interview that Stephanie gave about a year after Lisa's death. So this was in October of 2015. And Stephanie publicly stated that she was frustrated with authorities, that she had not heard from authorities for about 6 months. And that actually she and some of Lisa's friends had a suspect in mind, and they had given those leads to the police, but they didn't feel like the police were investigating those leads. Now, of course, whether or not they were investigating them, remains to be seen. A lot of times police are doing things behind the scenes and they're not able to update people to maintain the integrity of that investigation. But I did think it was interesting that they said that they had a suspect in mind. Now, of course, whenever I hear about, a spouse has been killed and they have an ex, my first thought is, oh my gosh, look at the ex-husband. But I truly don't think that the ex-husband in this instance had anything to do with the case. Stephanie actually said in that interview that she was really concerned for her father because now he would be the sole caretaker of her brother Matthew. And prior to that, he and Lisa had shared those caretaking duties, even post-divorce. And it doesn't sound like they had a nasty divorce by any means. So I think he can be eliminated as a suspect. I'm sort of wondering if perhaps, you know, Lisa was single. Did they look into the fact that maybe was she meeting somebody for a date? Was she on any dating websites? Was anybody coming over to her home that night and everything just kind of escalated from there? I don't know. My other thought, and I hate to even say this, but why would you set the body on fire after you've shot her? If you've shot and killed her, if your goal was to kill her, you know, you've done what you've set out to do. So why the fire? So what I was thinking is, had Lisa been sexually assaulted and the killer thought by setting the body on fire that they're going to burn up any DNA evidence that they would have left behind, which, you know, absolutely that would have happened. So they wouldn't have had any way to know whether or not Lisa was sexually assaulted or not. That's just one of the questions that I have. Another question I have too is authorities have never reported what type of gun was used to shoot Lisa. So I don't know if they have purposely kept that information from the public or they just were not able to figure that out. And then also, as I stated before, what evidence was found in this debris which tipped them off in the first place that this wasn't just an accidental house fire? So a lot of questions there. The Williamson County Sheriff's Department has been very vocal about the fact that they still consider this an open and active investigation. They don't have a lot of unsolved homicides in that area, and the fact that this hasn't been solved is very frustrating to them as well. Stephanie and her brother Matthew did raise a $10,000 reward, I think about a year after Lisa's death, hoping that that would help to generate more leads. To this day, that $10,000 reward is still sitting there. So I will definitely put up the number that you can call and report if you do have any tips. If you do know anything about this case, you can call the Williamson County Sheriff's Department directly, or if you do prefer to remain anonymous, I will put up the Crimestoppers number that you can call as well. You know, I really feel for Lisa. So one of the last conversations that Stephanie had with Lisa was Lisa talking about how she was really ready to be a grandmother. And shortly after Lisa's death, Stephanie discovered that she was pregnant. So Lisa has a grandchild out there that she's never gotten to meet. And I know that this is really heartbreaking for Stephanie and something that she thinks about all the time. I have noticed that pretty much every year since Lisa's death, usually around the time of the murder, there is a new newspaper article that comes out where police ask for new information. And again, you know, it's been 6 years, nothing has been done about this. Hopefully someone will see this video, share this video, and will realize that maybe they know something that they didn't even realize. Let's get those tips in and let's help to solve Lisa Uzzle's murder. Thanks for watching. Please hit subscribe if you would like notifications of when I upload new videos, which I do every Wednesday. Also, make sure to check out my Instagram where I give updates about these stories and tidbits of upcoming episodes I'm going to film. Thanks for watching, guys.